The Dallas Cowboys made two very surprising cuts on Wednesday. We'll tell you what we think they mean next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're talking about all of the roster moves that the Cowboys made on Wednesday. But Landon, I want to start with this. After initially making the 53-man roster, the Cowboys waived Zion Childress, an undrafted free agent defensive back from Kentucky. There were a lot of people thinking that he could potentially start in the slot in week one, and now he's subject to waivers. What happened?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, especially when you consider the fact that obviously Izzy McQuamu was another name that got cut and hasn't been reclaimed onto the practice squad. They did put in two roster claims for two defensive backs. That may explain some of it. One of them was Reddy Stewart, who was with the Titans. He is a nickel specifically, so maybe the idea is that they just thought he was in a better situation to kind of come in if they needed him. And you know, again, we talked about it on yesterday's show. The news of Trayvon Diggs is like, you know, upgraded schedule. I think it changes all the angles here, right? Just because, like, even if you could just get through week one, if he's not playing in week one, that changes the type of player that you're looking to kind of fill that role. If you think that Bland is going to end up being the nickelback for the majority of the season. So I think part of it is that, and then part of it is the fact that they just wanted to upgrade on the position. They found a guy on waivers that they felt like was maybe a little bit better.
So I have a couple different theories. I want you to tell me which one you think you like better. Theory number one, I think they believe Trayvon Diggs is going to be ready in week one, and that just takes away your need for a slot corner, right? Because you have DaRon Bland, you have Trayvon Diggs, you have Kyer Elam, and those are your three corners, right? You don't necessarily need that slot-only defensive back. Childress is really more of a safety than he is a corner, right? And you already have four safeties on your roster. They added a fifth today, but you already had four safeties on your roster. He probably just wasn't going to be active. The other part of me thinks that this was a sneaky way for the Cowboys to make sure that Zion Childress makes it to the practice squad, because if you cut him or waive him on Tuesday, now he's part of these big waivers. People have roster spots. You're all ready to go. But now that everybody's kind of put together the 53-man roster, they've made their moves, I just have a hard time seeing someone claiming Zion Childress now, because when you claim these guys, it's not like you can have them for a week and then cut them. Like, you're guaranteeing that they're going to be on the roster for the first month of the year. I wonder if this wasn't a sneaky way for the Cowboys to get Childress back on the practice squad, and maybe we do see him elevated earlier in the season.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, they're currently at 15 practice squad spots, if I'm not mistaken. And then they added the
international player,
international player of the Ravens, right? So he becomes 16, but it's actually 17 the number if you include the international player. So they still have one more roster spot. I wonder if practice squad spot specifically. I wonder if they aren't waiting to see if Childress gets through and they just claim him on the other side.
Yeah, the other one is Andrew Booth, and that one, I'm not surprised that he was cut, because he was somebody that was, I think, borderline on the roster. But what does the rest of your cornerback room look like now with Childress and Booth both gone?
Well, I mean, I think if anything, it speaks to the confidence they must have in Diggs at this point, right? Because like, if Booth is not coming back, I mean, he was specifically your outside corner backup, right? Because if you're looking at the three that you've got out there, and then Booth was probably the guy that was going to be the first off the bench. And if you look at it this week, I mean, if let's say Diggs didn't play week one, there was a chance he probably could have gotten on the field. So I think that they must feel like his situation is such that, they feel confident enough that they can get by without Booth and just kind of roll with Elam and Bland until Diggs gets back, and then kind of cobble together the inside spot.
Who's the third corner on the outside if Diggs isn't ready?
Well, I think right now it's this guy that they got from the Chargers, right? It's so I either they're thinking of looking at kicking the tires on another veteran potentially to be an outside backup, or they're gonna roll with I think his name is Jaquez Bridges, right? So
we're gonna be calling him Bridges on the show. I can promise you that.
That's true. Yeah. He's gonna be a bridge to health, hopefully, at the very least.
So yeah, it's fascinating. I wouldn't be surprised if that situation happened, if they bring up someone like Keemon Hall, who is on the practice squad right now. But fascinating to see both these guys, being released a day after they made it. A couple other moves that they made on Wednesday: Phil Maffa, Kalen Carson, both made the initial 53-man roster. Both have now gone on the injured reserve list. They are now going to miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season. Carson, I did see earlier this week, was working on the cords. It seemed like he was getting closer to being back, but probably not ready for week 1, maybe not ready for week 2. And Phil Maffa, I have no idea. I mean, my guess is that he's healthy enough to play if needed. This is just a way to stash him, and we'll reevaluate the running back situation when we get to October.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Carson situation. It's just weird. He's in a kind of a weird spot, and because of the injury, we just didn't know where he was. Obviously, they still like him enough to kind of IR him to return. And I think that you look at that, and once he's back, maybe he's the guy that ends up being the kind of backup outside guy, when he gets back in healthy. So, I mean, I think he hasn't done a ton in training camp. But what we saw last year early on, I thought was pretty good, until it wasn't. So, and that was his rookie year. So I do think you still want to see more of Kalen Carson there. And I'm sorry, who was the person you mentioned?
Oh, Phil Maffa. I was just going to say the cornerback situation is much like the running back. Like, I would not be surprised we get to October and they just reevaluate everything with, hopefully, Savon Ravel maybe coming back, he's going to miss the first 4 games of the season on NFI. Same with Josh Butler. Same with Kalen Carson. If you need one of those guys, maybe you bring them up. But there's a chance that both the running back room and the cornerback room look completely different a month from now.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have an idea of who they want to focus on in both of those rooms, right? As it stands right now, the thing that's really kind of fungible, as Jerry would say, is everything underneath it, right? Like all the
just rolled my eyes to the back of my head.
I heard it, and so I think that's what it is that it's like you are okay, I think, with the guys you kind of have at the top level. I think you're probably more okay with the cornerback room once everybody's healthy. But I think you still want to try to find ways to improve that part of the roster, and you can do so kind of in the back half of it. That's why they rolled out a group of DBs, and they rolled back in a new group just to kind of see what else is out there, see if they can hit on something. I think the depth at the cornerback position is really dependent on when you look at it, right? Like, I think in a couple weeks you get Ravel back, potentially Josh Butler as well, and suddenly you're okay. Maybe you're a little more comfortable with where you are. But until then, you may just kind of be platooning guys in and out to see where you are with that. And running back, that's just the nature of the position at running back. Like, especially if you're not going to have a true bell cow, you're going to be rotating in the churning the bottom of the roster, see if you can find some guy that has a hot hand, and then you kind of just inject him into a running back by committee situation.
All right, let's talk about the Cowboys practice squad. We referenced it briefly, but now we know 16 of the names on the practice squad. What does that group tell us about the upcoming season? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football prediction into real rewards. Preseason has already wrapped up, and college football isn't far behind. We got games this weekend. Whether you've got your eye on a big name quarterback or a breakout running back, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in the game. And for this weekend, Prize Picks is offering major max discounts. Max discount number 2. We've got Dak Prescott max discount for the week 1 game against Philadelphia. All he needs to do is get to 1 passing yard. for you to win. It's so simple. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 off in your lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We have an important request from you guys. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't like, and answer questions about our advertising. So go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. And you can also find the link in the show notes. Thank you for helping us out. All right, Lane, let's talk about the practice squad. We know 16 of the 17 names that are going to be on the practice squad. What is the group signal to you? Because there's a lot of very, very interesting names in that group.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it looks like they are, mostly kind of just collecting the guys that were, their borderline players, right? Like, I think it's interesting to me that they ended up keeping 2 tight ends on the practice squad instead of going with 4 tight ends on the regular roster, or at least that's how it is currently, because it does feel like there was a pretty clear separation, with that wide receiver 3 being, BSF, and then, whoever you wanted to kind of eyeball as your tight end 4 on this team, whether it was John Stevens Jr. for some folks. I think Rivaldo Fairweather, who ended up making the practice squad, ended up doing some nice things at the end of training camp, War Eagle, and then your guy Princeton Fant, I think is an incredibly useful player.
Did you see that block he had last week?
Oh
just
my God,
over that guy. I mean,
and that's why, right? I think he could be an excellent fullback if you needed him to, if something were to happen.
Yeah, he could be like Hunter Lipke 2.0, better improved version, right?
0.7 is what I would say. But yeah, okay, so I think it wasn't. I don't know that I took a ton away from the construction of like the positions that they pulled out, other than it felt like this is a collection of guys that were on the borderline and they really liked. And I think even down to like someone like Robert Rochelle, who, a lot of Cowboys fans may not have heard very much about, but they really liked him early in training camp. And so it's not surprising that they ended up with the practice squad filled with their own guys, I guess. No. And I think that it's a group of guys that frankly are familiar faces. We've seen Malik Davis, we've seen Jalen Cropper on these practice squads before.
Well, the thing that stood out to me is some of the guys who didn't make the practice squad. Like, for example, it seems like this staff, Brian Schottenheimer, Matt Eberflus, they're moving on from some guys that have been given a lot of time. Like, I thought John Stevens, who was on his way to making the 53-man roster a couple of years ago, he's had multiple setbacks with his knee. It feels like they just kind of felt like, hey, it's not going to happen. And they moved on. And that's why they kept Fairweather instead, like why they kept Princeton Fant instead. I mean, there's no doubt that Stevens has a higher ceiling, but it felt like they wanted to move on. Same with Israel Makamu, somebody that we thought had a chance to make the 53-man roster. Not only does he not make the 53, he doesn't make the practice squad. And he has not signed with another team's practice squad as of this moment. There's quite a few of those. Deuce Vaughn's another one. Deuce Vaughn maybe was on the borderline of making this team, not on the practice squad. They've churned over a lot of these guys that have been given plenty of opportunities over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're truly going for competition. It feels like I mean, the guys that it doesn't feel like any one of these guys that's on this list didn't necessarily earn their spot. I mean, even down to a guy like Jerron Christian, who was a late add to this team, but I thought played pretty decently down the stretch and played a lot in that third preseason game. So,
I was surprised to see Christian over Lyle Collins.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing over Lyle Collins though.
He was.
So
Yeah.
so it's and I think that that's part of the other thing too, is that maybe the Lyle Collins situation was just a benefit for a friend. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe Dak just kind of pulled some strings to get him in here to get him out working in the NFL again. So maybe other teams could come kick the tires on him. So, but again, hey, it speaks to what we just talked about. Maybe it's just purely about competition at this point. No favors being done, for scouts sons, or friends of the quarterback anymore.
A couple other ones. Ernest Brown, it seemed like he was very close to making the roster,
Yeah.
like very close. It was coming down to Perion Winfrey versus Ernest Brown. Winfrey made it. Ernest Brown snuck onto the practice squad. I'm sure the Cowboys feel great about that one. So that one I thought was interesting. Another one that I found fascinating, and actually we predicted this on the show earlier this week, is Jalen Brooks, right? We thought they would give Ryan Flournoy the chance to make the 53-man roster because he's got more upside, and it was going to be easier to sneak Jalen Brooks onto the practice squad. He made it. I won't be shocked if Jalen Brooks is active, though, week 1 for the Cowboys, because maybe you just lean on Flournoy, Brooks, Goodwin to be your 3 primary special teams players with all the turnover that you have in the secondary right now.
Yeah, and with all the rules that they changed, I think it's opened opportunities up for guys like Brooks to kind of have a career doing this stuff if they wanted to. So yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, he's a guy that has experience playing, as a wide receiver in the NFL. Clearly has a ton of experience as a special teams player, and you could do more with these guys now, right? Like because you can protect the certain amount of players in the practice squad. There's just you can feel better about stashing these guys on your team and not feel like you're necessarily exposing them this entire time to getting claimed. So it's a little bit more difficult to kind of pull those guys off. So guys like Justin Barron and Elijah Clark, who I think you want to see them develop, you want to see them potentially, get opportunities. You're not going to feel like, hey, we're developing these guys for somebody else to just come claim them off the team when, somebody gets hurt for them. So I do think it's a great opportunity for guys like this to not just be on the team, but to get actual reps in NFL games, and then kind of carry that over to next year and see how that works.
I'm glad that you brought up Barron, because he's the one name that was the most excited that made the practice squad, because I can see a situation, Landon, where he is one of their top 4 linebackers next year. Like, look at the linebacker room right now. You have DeMarvion Overshown. His health is always a question mark, right? You've got Kenneth Murray on a 1-year deal. You've got Jack Sanborn on a 1-year deal. You've got Damone Clark on a 1-year deal. I think we saw enough of Barron in the preseason where we should be hopeful that he could potentially take one of those spots, become that last linebacker on the roster. He's got some traits. He can play, a couple different positions. They move them all around. I think he can help out on special teams. Barron is one of the guys that I was nervous might get claimed. Excited to see him back on the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of the perfect practice squad linebacker, right? He's traitsy. Like, you definitely don't mind him running down the field on special teams because he's got good athleticism. He's a former safety. He's moved to linebacker. So, a guy that probably just needs to be in an NFL locker weight room for a year. Syracuse is a nice school, but I mean, that's not quite the same thing as the NFL weight room. So I think an opportunity to just get a little bit bigger and grow into playing linebacker. He's only been playing it for, I think, 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. He moved
Something
after
like
his sophomore year. So anyways, I think it's great to see him kind of make it so the Cowboys have an opportunity to develop someone like that.
Yeah, and last one, Trayshawn Holden, for the 88th year in a row, a down roster receiver makes it through waivers to the practice squad. Hey, listen, I'm excited that he's on the practice squad because I do think there's a chance maybe next year he takes like the Jalen Tolbert role, but he needed a year on the practice squad.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a year away he needed a year to get to where Flournoy was, right? So I think that's where he is right now, but he's an exciting player that I can't wait to see how he develops over the next year.
All right, let's talk about what the Cowboys still have left to accomplish before they take on the Eagles in week 1. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast on average in 15 minutes, and effects can last up to 36 hours so that you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. So head over to rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That is RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatments. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same game parlay. My favorite thing is future bets. Like I love going to look at who's going to win the divisions, who's going to make the playoffs, who's going to miss it, plus the MVP awards, the comeback player of the year awards. There's so much fun to bet on. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to make Sundays or Thursdays like the Cowboys this week a little bit more exciting. So are you ready? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. It's another big moment for Locked On college football fans. Locked On and Fire TV presents College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation along two-time AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson, and former college star Jesse Hawley. You guys know him. And Locked On's local experts, a college football preview only that Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Landon, what do the Cowboys have left to do now that we have about a week? Yeah, it's exactly a week until the NFL season kicks off.
I mean, I keep looking at nose tackle and waiting for them to do something. I think I've rightfully said that, look, that this is one of those positions in running back where they can upgrade this position all the way up until the regular season, but we have kind of reached that limit at this point, right? We're kind of at the spot where if they were going to do something to improve the spot, it feels like it's time to do something to improve the spot. So unless we hear something in the next 2 or 3 days, I would say, I mean, a week seems like right.
Here's
around
my
the
tinfoil.
time.
I got my tinfoil hat right next to me.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
I don't think they're going to sign anybody this week. And the reason why is because even if you were to sign a guy today, Thursday, right? They're probably not going to be ready to go against the Eagles in week 1. But I wouldn't be surprised we get out of week 1 if they sign a defensive tackle then, because now you're paying those guys week by week, right? And this is what the Cowboys have done in the past. They've signed some veterans rather than guaranteeing their salary for the whole season. You bring in a couple different guys, you pay them week by week, you see how it goes, and you move on if it doesn't work.
Yeah, because sometimes you get them in and they don't look right. You know, they're
like Jordan Phillips last year.
It was literally what I was thinking of. You know, and so. I think it certainly does make, and you know, once you don't have to guarantee their contracts, that obviously does change their angles. And I don't think that's too tinfoil hatty at all, to be honest. So, I think that, you know, if they were trying to do something to upgrade the position or to, like, you know, solve the issue long-term, like a trade or something, like, I think at this point it probably would have been done. I think you're right. At this point, they're probably going to transition more to a mercenary for hire in the middle of your defense kind of model. Otherwise, you know, you could be as our friend John Owning is suggesting that that we're going to get a whole lot of Solomon Thomas, undersized nose tackle trying to backdoor, shoot gaps and disrupt run games that way. But I can't imagine that that's how they're going to end up doing this.
Oh, I can. I mean, I would not be surprised if that's the plan early in the season until something better pops up, and maybe you see more run blitzes, and maybe you try to see Matt Eberflus doing some creative things to stop the run. But there's just not really any good defensive tackles out there that are going to change the equation at all. Kind of going to go in the season with the group that you have.
I kind of think that they're probably going to do a lot of five-man surface stuff too, and that would help a little bit because that eliminates the ability for them to double team. So you don't necessarily need to have that big nose tackle. But, if that's the case, then that's a whole other strategy. It'll be interesting to see them do that regularly.
And the last thing they need to accomplish before week 1 would be signing Micah Parsons. Like that seems something they maybe should have done a couple weeks ago, but we're getting real close to the finish line here, Landon, and it doesn't seem like a deal's in sight.
Yeah, I mean, we're still 2 days away from where CD signed. Yeah, I mean, look, we've spoken ad nauseum about this, so it's hard to add anything more. But obviously, it's getting dark out there, folks. But I would just say, focus on what's real and not the smoke that's being blown around, and then we'll see how it all turns out week 1.
Yeah, we'll have to see once we get a little bit closer to week 1. My back is feeling a little tight right now, Landon. Like you might have to get someone to replace me. We'll see. I'm gonna have to sit up. All right, that is it for today's show. We would like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.